Wednesday, October 27, 1993, Charles III, the current King of Britain, delivered a speech to a large crowd in which he spoke with great reverence and admiration about the inheritance rights of Muslim women in the Quran, and he also compared it to the inheritance rights of European women during his grandmother's era. We will show his speech on video shortly. We will also present testimonies from Western scholars and Orientalists about the greatness of inheritance laws in Islam. But the important question now is, what would make a man of such stature speak with such amazement and admiration about the status of women in Islam and compare it to the status of women in modern Europe? That's what we will answer today, and we will clarify the huge difference between inheritance laws in Islam and those in Judaism by referring to the texts of the Torah, the Talmud, and the recognized Jewish books. So watch the video until the end. Don't forget that our recent videos are dubbed in English. If you want to watch this video, you'll see me speaking English. You just need to click on Settings and select the English audio track. The video is divided into several sections. The first section is about women's inheritance in Judaism. The second section, women's inheritance in Islam. And the third section is about the testimony of King Charles III of Britain and others regarding women's inheritance in Islam. So if you're in a hurry and want to watch the video about the King of Britain, you'll be able to find it easily. But it's better to stay with us until the end so you get the full benefit. If you're one of the loyal followers who watch the videos all the way through, write a comment below and I'll read them, God willing. The first section, women's inheritance in Judaism. A woman, whether she is a daughter, a wife, or a mother, according to Jewish law, the basic rule is that she does not inherit anything at all, under any circumstances, except in one single case. We read in the Torah, which is believed in by Jews and Christians today, in the book of Numbers 27:8, it says, "If a man dies and has no son, you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter." This means that if a man dies and leaves behind a son and a daughter, the son is the one who inherits, and the daughter does not inherit anything. And if he leaves behind two sons and a daughter, the inheritance is divided only between the two sons. The eldest son receives twice as much as the younger one. But if the man dies and has no sons, only daughters, then in this case, the inheritance is distributed among the daughters. So this is the only situation in which a woman inherits. But even in this case, there is a condition. This condition is mentioned in the book of Numbers, chapter 36, which is that the girl must marry within the same tribe and clan. She is not allowed to marry outside her tribe. Not only that, but there is something even harsher and more difficult than this. Do you know, my friend, that if a man has a son and a daughter, and that son dies but leaves behind children, meaning the man has a daughter and grandchildren from his deceased son. In this case, the grandchildren of the son inherit, while the man's direct daughter does not inherit anything from her father. Even if the deceased son only had daughters, daughters inherit from their grandfather. The poor girl who is her father's daughter will not inherit anything from her father. Imagine a young granddaughter inheriting all the wealth, while the deceased man's daughter inherits absolutely nothing. This is found in many sources, including a reputable legal reference. Yusef el-Sherbini Aruk, it means the arranged table or the extended table. This reference was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo in the 16th century AD, and it is a respected and authoritative Jewish source. It states that if a man dies and leaves behind a son, the son inherits everything. And if he does not have a living son, we look at the descendants of the son. So if the son has descendants, whether male or female, even a great-great-granddaughter of his son, until the end of time, she inherits everything, and the daughter does not inherit alongside her. Imagine, the deceased daughter is deprived, while an infant granddaughter takes everything. But what about the wife, a woman whose husband has died? How much does she inherit? Zero, she gets nothing at all. She will not inherit anything from her husband whatsoever. She only gets the amount written in the marriage contract, which in Hebrew is called the ketubah. It's something similar to the deferred dowry, mar, in Islamic tradition. If she takes it, that's it. She leaves the house and has no further rights. And if the woman does not claim the deferred dowry, she remains in the marital home and is provided for. But she owns absolutely nothing. Now let's talk about the inheritance of the mother. If a woman's son dies, how much does she inherit? Zero, she gets nothing at all. The mother is deprived of her son's inheritance as long as the father is alive. So, the philosophy of inheritance in Judaism is based on the idea that wealth remains only with the men. I'm talking about the legislation and the texts, so no one comes and tells me, in our country, my uncle took my mother's inheritance, and all that stuff you already know. Religion is represented by its texts, not by the actions of individuals. After we've seen the system that deprives the mother and the wife and makes the daughter a secondary option, conditional on a specific marriage, what is the alternative system that amazed the King of Britain? That's what we'll see in the second section. Women's inheritance in Islam. Unlike the protection of the tribe in Jewish law, Islam introduced a system based on 3 elements. These elements refute any accusation of injustice. The first element is the degree of kinship. The closer you are to the deceased, the greater your share. So if a man dies and leaves behind a daughter and a father, the daughter takes half, 50%, as a fixed share. The father takes his fixed share, which is 1/6, and the rest he takes as a residuary heir. That means he gets the remaining 50%, she gets 50, and he gets 50. In the end, the daughter is equal to the father. The second point is the inheriting generation's position. Younger people starting out get more than those nearing life's end. For example, the daughter receives more than her grandparents combined, as her generation needs to establish itself. However, while Judaism says that the mother does not inherit anything, Islam says that she has a right to inherit. It is a legitimate inheritance, though less than future generations get. But she has the right to live off it, and does not have to live as a dependent under someone else's control, as in Jewish law. The third element is the financial burden. The son gets twice as much as the daughter because he must provide financial support, while the daughter's share is pure savings and private property. Islam gave the daughter half her brother's share as net savings. She is not required to spend any of it on anyone else, while the brother, who received double, is obligated to spend on his wife, his children, and on her personally if she needs it. This is what the famous American historian Will Durant explained in his encyclopedia, The Story of Civilization, where he says that the law of inheritance in Islam was a powerful factor in preventing the accumulation of vast wealth in the hands of a few, as it unequivocally guaranteed women a specific, legally recognized share in the estate of their husband or father, a right that was not fully recognized in the West until many centuries later. Here, Durant unpacks the philosophy of inheritance. He believes that Islam broke the male monopoly that existed in the West, and in Jewish law, it gave women a specific and fixed share. Likewise, the Swiss Orientalist Edward Montet, Dean of the University of Geneva, when he read the verses of inheritance in the Quran, wrote in the introduction to his translation of the Quran, "The Quran has elevated the status of women in a remarkable way, and the significant social reforms that were introduced by Islam, particularly those reforms related to matters of inheritance, are imbued with a spirit of justice and protection for the vulnerable groups." Here, Montet testifies that Islam elevated the status of women and made the inheritance system a protection for the weak. In contrast, the inheritance system in Jewish texts is based on exclusive possession of wealth by men with no concern for women. Now that we have clarified the philosophies of Islam and Judaism regarding inheritance, let's move on to the third section, which is the video of the King of Britain and then the testimonies of others. Let's watch a video of Charles III when he was the Prince of Wales. What does he say?
The rights of Muslim women to property and inheritance, to some measure of protection in divorce, and to conducting business and commercial activities were rights prescribed by the Quran over 1400 years ago. Even if they were not always put into practice everywhere in Britain at least, some of these rights were actually new even to my grandmother's generation.
We can frankly say that the rights guaranteed to women by Islam were completely new even to his grandmother's generation. So the difference is truly vast and significant. Women in their society had no right to own anything or inherit anything. But in Islam, a woman has her own independent financial status. She can own whatever she wants and spend as she wishes. And she has an inherent right to inheritance, as clearly stated in the Quran, and what Charles III said is not something unique to him alone. He didn't say it because he wanted money or was afraid of anyone. But these are words that have been said by many Westerners and researchers, such as Gustave Le Bon in his book, The Civilization of the Arabs. He says on page 402, "The principles of inheritance set forth in the Quran are extremely just and fair, and by comparing them with French and English laws, it becomes readily apparent that, in fact, Islamic law granted wives, whom it is claimed Muslims do not treat well, inheritance rights that cannot be found in our own laws." In another part of the same book, the book The Civilization of the Arabs, on page 414, he says, "And the Quran has granted women inheritance rights better than those in most of our European laws." So Islam was not a reaction to social development. Islam was a leader in social justice. The West changes its laws all the time because they are man-made and subject to error and correction. But Islam granted women financial independence at a time when the world considered her part of the inheritance, not someone who inherited. So by what logic do some of our own people, whose names are Islam and Ibrahim, demand this from us? Anyone who tells us to abandon a system centuries ahead of others and follow human systems still experimenting and making mistakes. And why do we see you fierce in criticizing Islam but like ostriches when it comes to criticizing other systems? That's why the British law professor Milcromsey says that Islamic inheritance law undoubtedly contains the most magnificent and precise set of rules for distributing estates ever known to the civilized world. The beauty and harmony of this system have reached such a truly remarkable level that studying it is genuinely worthwhile for its intellectual value and the sheer mental pleasure it provides. In the end, the logic, order, and justice that deeply impressed the King of Britain, as well as Gustave Le Bon, Edward Montet, Milcromsey, and many others, and Durant, among others. All of this was not a coincidence, but rather a genuine and sincere expression of admiration for a divine legislation that emerged from the heart of the Arabian Peninsula 14 centuries ago, a place where, at the time, women were considered inheritance to be passed to men, yet the Quran granted women inheritance to receive and wealth to own. If someone told you that a simple, primitive society respected, honored, cared for women, and granted them rights that women in civilized countries only recently obtained, you wouldn't believe them. But this is the reality, attested to by both those who agree and those who disagree. All of this is thanks to Islam, so praise be to God for the blessing of Islam. The video has ended. If you benefited from it, please hit like and share with those interested so the benefit may spread. Stay tuned for another video soon, God willing. May the peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you.